Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Greg Bell. I'm the Associate Dean of the Graduate School and Professor of Mathematics here at UNC Greensboro. Welcome to our session on inclusive pedagogy in creating inclusive environments in the classroom. I'm joined today by three faculty experts. We've got Dr. Jewel Cooper, we've got Dr. Jane He, and Dr. Omar Ali. And they're going to talk to us today about how to create inclusive environments in your classrooms. And they're going to specifically talk about some practical steps that you can take as instructors when you walk into that classroom for the first time. And the goal of today's session is that you're comfortable walking into that classroom, whether it's your first time in the classroom in front of students or whether you've done this hundreds of times. We want to make sure that when you begin your class, when you have discussions, you create an environment that's welcoming and inclusive. So I'd like to just begin by asking our three experts to talk about some of the ways that that you've found helpful to create inclusive environments in your own classrooms or in your own research, what you found. So I think maybe we can start with Jewel.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. Once again, I'm Jewel Cooper. At present, I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs and Student Success in the School of Education. Believe it or not, I've been at UNCG for around 22 years now. And I was an undergraduate of UNCG as well. So I know about the students that you're going to teach. Would you like for us to continue with our advice, or would you like all three of us to introduce ourselves, Dr. Bell?
Let's go ahead and introduce ourselves first, and then we'll move on. Thanks, Dr. Cooper.
My name is Jane He. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Teacher Education and Higher Education, also in the School of Education. In addition to working with teacher candidates in our department, I also work with international students through our School of Education Global Pathway Program.
Great. And my name is Omar Ali. I serve as the Dean of Lloyd International Honors College, and I'm on the faculty of the African American and African Diaspora Studies program and the Department of History, and actually the Geography, Environment, and Sustainability as well. So we are going to open with a question, I guess, Dr. Bell.
Yeah, so thank you. So the question is just, if you could talk about some of the ways that you found it helpful to create inclusive classrooms.
I'd be glad to begin. Because I've been in the School of Education for 22 years and earlier in colleges of education and other institutions, I come to you from a vantage point of real solid pedagogy because I'm used to teaching teachers how to teach. Therefore, if I had to tell you the central idea in my mind about making a class as inclusive as possible, I would tell you to think about your class first and foremost as a community as one that is filled with students from culturally diverse backgrounds. When I say culturally diverse, I am talking about they bring with them into the classroom a racial and ethnic identity. They bring with them a socioeconomic identity, a gender identity, a linguistic one. Believe it or not, they bring an age group identity. They bring an identity of ability, whether it's physical, mental, psychological, or academic. And they bring with them an identity of the geography from which they hail. The ways in which how I participate as a female or a male in the South might be very, very different than how I participate as a male or female or as is expected of me in the far West. So you have to consider those things. Furthermore, you must consider the developmental readiness of your students because not everyone comes prepared in the same ways. Those students have been influenced by the experiences of their lives. They've heard authoritative voices which have taught them what truth is. Their truth might not be your truth, but it doesn't mean that their truth is an incorrect truth. The second a piece of advice I would give you would be how you have to empower them. That's what I would say. Many of your students are going to walk in the class thinking that you have all the power over them, meaning the power of the grade. The first thing you can do to at least help them see that you're giving that power back, you really don't have the power, they have the power over their learning, is creating rules of engagement. What is going to be acceptable for discussions, interactions in class? And while you might bring a sample of what your expectations are, please allow them to have feedback on that. Allow them to have a voice in it, because believe it or not, that's the first demonstration of you valuing what they have to say and making a decision over their own learning. Of course, I would also tell you to be respectful of their different beliefs and opinions, but being respectful of their beliefs and opinions does not mean that you will allow disrespect to occur. That's very, very important. And it's important for you to know the difference and conduct the class accordingly. My last piece of advice that I would tell you in creating an inclusive classroom is you must demonstrate that learning is mutually beneficial to your students. Not only are you teaching them, but they are teaching you. And the ways in which you demonstrate that and even publicly acknowledge that is a very, very powerful tool, because it consciously shows your students that learning is an ever-evolving process. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Jane.
Thank you, Dr. Cooper. I really appreciate what you commented on, especially the community of learners, the empowerment and engagement process. And I want to build upon what you mentioned earlier about learning as a mutual process. And as an instructor, I always felt that I really enjoy teaching. And for me, teaching is actually a very beneficial learning process. So I think that as instructors, if we take a learning stance into a classroom, that's already a good first step into building an inclusive classroom. So we're learning from our students. We are actually learning about our content through our interaction with our students. And believe it or not, a lot of times we are co-constructing the content and our teaching and learning experiences with our learners. So with that, I just want to share maybe a couple of ideas how you can do that. One is that, for teaching and for any classes, we all know that there is a course evaluation at the end of the course. But sometimes it's also helpful that you don't think about course evaluation necessarily as a summative assessment only occur at the end of the course where you hear feedback from your students. So if you can think about that as a checkpoint where you can integrate early on in the semester, where you invite students' feedback and advice, and then during the semester and throughout your coursework, you can intentionally allow for different ways for students to share their feedback with you, both in a way where they may reveal their identity and actually contribute and share their suggestions, and also anonymously. So there are different ways that you can set it up where you can hear voices from your students without having to wait till the end of the semester to learn that, oh, here's the feedback. I wish that I known that earlier. And that also allows you to make adaptations to your teaching. So you do a very good job planning your class and planning your lesson, but this way you can actually take the feedback and modify and adapt your teaching throughout your entire teaching process. And then that's a really good way to demonstrate your learning. And the second practical suggestion that I'll make is think about teaching as a learning process through self-reflection. So, as Dr. Cooper mentioned, we're learning from our students and we're learning through this community. So as a learner in this process, we really need to be thinking about what we are learning, how we are developing, both as a learner in our professional field and also as a learner to become a better teacher, better instructor, better professor in our field, taking on this teaching stance. So reflecting on what we already know and then really good at doing, So for example, if you're very good at building relationship with students, definitely reflect on that and what strategy works. And then also think about areas that maybe you want to set as your development goals. So intentionally set some goals for yourself so that you can further develop as an instructor and a professor in your field as well. So I'll just stop here and hand it over to Dr. Ali to share more advice.
These are wonderful framings and practical pieces of advice and direction. I think that just to build on that, I would say that I think that one thing that happens when I reflect on when I first started teaching was that I, in some ways, was less attentive to things like body language and making sure that everybody was speaking in the classroom at least once. And so what you can do in ways that's not calling people out, but it's the posture. I think that Dr. Hayes, it said, you said stance. There's a kind of a posture that you have of being open. And I think that we are the leaders in the classroom, even as we're co-creating the learning, we're really setting the tone. And I think that that's really important to have, that your posture of openness, of warmth, I think in many cases, I think depending on how you feel, I think really will be reflected in how students respond. So I think that one of the things, just to add to the practical pieces of advice, is to try to, as a goal, make sure that everybody says something once during the class. And again, by asking, I was wondering maybe what you were thinking, X person, and looking for students who might be distracted and bring them in, but doing so, and you'll forgive me for saying this, but doing so in a caring, loving way. Actually, I think that we want to demonstrate our care for them, that we're not trying to embarrass them. We're just saying, I was wondering maybe what you were thinking about this thing, a specific thing. So that's just one little piece of advice I would say, is to make sure that everybody participates in a way each class session. I think there's a lot more we could say, but maybe we could take it back to Greg and you could say if there's another question you'd like us to respond to.
Sure. So thank you all for your answers. I wonder, a lot of our students are going to be teaching for the very first time. They're going to be stepping in front of a classroom as the instructor of record or as a teaching assistant for the very first time. So we all know how important it is to create a great first impression. So what kind of tips do you have for the students who are stepping into that role for their first day, their first week, their first couple of weeks, to set the right tone, to adopt that learner stance, to include all of their students, and to do so in a caring way?
Dr. Cooper?
I'm trying to think. There are lots of things I can tell you to do. First and foremost, I would say students love something about you. Now, they don't need to know your life history. They don't need to know all the mistakes you made. And there's certain information that should not be shared with students, because there should be a clear line of delineation between you as a very warm, caring person and you as their instructor. Definite line of demarcation should be made. However, they love knowing about you. They love hearing things about where you went to school, what it was like for you to be an undergraduate, a graduate student, et cetera, that kind of thing. How you grew up, your brothers and sisters, and because you want to find some kind of connection with them in some kind of way. That helps you make their learning relevant as well. So you must share a bit about you, as well as what your expectations are of the class, et cetera, and be very, very open to their questions. And by the way, graduate teaching assistants, no question is a bad question, because more than likely when one student will ask that question, there are others who want the answer too, but might not be brave enough to answer it. If I could piggyback, Dr. Bell, on Dr. Ali's answer as far as hearing everybody in the class, there are multiple ways you can do that, because you're going to have some students who are really definitely afraid of speaking out in class. You can do it one-on-one in full class, whole class discussions. You can work in small groups where you're walking around and hearing those students' voices. You can do it in paired groups or so. However, the content deems itself, or whatever the activity is, I would ask that you do that. And you cannot, because remember I said about developmental readiness, by no means can you sit and talk to students a full 50 minutes and think that they're going to be engaged. You're going to have to mix those activities. You might do something for 20 or 30 minutes and then shift it to a small group activity and then do it for 20 or 30 minutes and then shift it to something else. It might be a video that you want them to watch and then have small discussion after that. You have to mix up the activities that you're doing and have several activities going on, even in a 50-minute class, a 90-minute class, even in a 2-hour or 3-hour class. You have to do that. That's how you make learning very, very engaging, and you appeal to many other learning styles as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's so important to the appropriate self-disclosure in the beginning of the class or interaction with the students. And that first impression is very important. And through that, you're also modeling what you're expecting your students to do to each other and share and participate in this learning community with you. So in addition to what Dr. Cooper shared about the different learning modes and offering different ways for students to participate in various activities in class. I think another thing that you may want to also consider is to invite students to share with you what their preferred ways of learning and preferred ways of engaging are. I think undergraduate students and graduate students are really, all of our undergraduate students have years of learning experiences. So if you think about that, by entering college, they have already accomplished a lot. And then they have overcame a lot of obstacles throughout their K through 12 learning. So they know what are the things and strategies that they use and what are the things that really make them good learners. And what we are doing as instructors is really to facilitate this learning process to make sure that the learning, we can maximize all the learning opportunities for all learners. So inviting some input from your learners as you start to set those shared expectations of class dialogues and how to set up the learning space would probably be helpful, in addition to setting your own expectation, of course, you will have based on the syllabus and the content and all that.
Yeah, I think that this goes to what you're saying is the empowerment, right? That Dr. Cooper was talking about. In some ways, by asking them, you're giving them that sense of co-creation of the learning environment space. So I really agree with that. And we're just joined right now by Professor Leila Villaverde. We were just going around just sharing a little bit about what are some practical things to help creating an inclusive learning environment. Would you like to add something at this point?
Yeah, well, first, my apologies. I've just been in one defense after another all week long. I think it's really, and I'm sure most of you have said this already, but it's really about being present in the classroom as an educator, and recognizing your students, taking that moment to build community very early on, so that that's the kind of foreground that allows you to weather any kind of bumps along the way after that. If a student has a question, if you've made a connection with them, then they're able and they feel more comfortable, right, to ask those tough questions, or for you to raise or challenge them to do something that perhaps they haven't thought about doing prior to. So it's doing that work on the forefront in order to build the tone that you want to take on. And I think the other important point is to remember that you're modeling teaching at the same time that you're teaching the content. And so you have to kind of be mindful about that.
It's great. I'll just add one other thing to that, which is that I think that one of the things you will get better at is teaching by teaching. And so you'll hear all this stuff and you might read some books, you might read some articles, and you'll fumble around, and it's okay. But I think if we go back to that sort of that thinking of the classroom as a community, a co-created space, being open, in some ways demonstrating, modeling, I think you can't go wrong, honestly, because students will go with you if you model that kind of openness, I think. And I agree with my colleagues here that you do want to set a boundary. You are the instructor there. And you're also open along the lines of what Professor Villaverde said.
To add to what Dr. Ali and what Dr. Villaverde said, and please, Dr. Villaverde, before I continue, please introduce yourself as we did.
Okay. Do you want me to do that now?
Yes, please.
So I'm Leila Villaverde. I am a professor in the School of Education in the Department of Educational Leadership and Cultural Foundations. I'm also the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Dean's Fellow for the School of Education.
Thank you. It's one last pedagogical tip I'd like to add, and I'm sure my colleague, Dr. Villaverde, will agree with me. Please, 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 graduate teaching assistants, if you have a video or if you have a song you'd like to play or anything, please review it first to make sure that there is not any objectionable material or offensive material in it. Even though it might not be offensive to some of your students, it could be offensive to other students. And if you don't do it and you show it, you will still be held accountable for its showing. So I wanted to especially tell you all that. And finally, for me to tell you, everything we've told you, all eyes are on you. All eyes are on you, especially in the beginning days. You're going to be watched, you're going to be critiqued, you're going to be scrutinized over a period of time. It's all in the process of learning to teach and becoming a teacher. Please don't beat yourselves up about it. You know, don't be too hard on yourselves. Ask friends to come in and sit in on classes to give you feedback. Ask your advisors to give you feedback. Because especially if you are seeking academic positions, you're going to have to teach classes later on. And you still want to be called back the following year to teach the classes as well.
Well, colleagues, thank you so much. Is there anything that anyone would like to add before we close?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you all said it, but first and foremost, have fun. Yes. Teaching and learning is an enjoyable experience, and that's at the heart of it. If you're enjoying your craft and you're enjoying your content, that's contagious. And so that's the one thing. We get kind of heady about doing it right, but you've got to enjoy it.
I think that's a perfect message to end on. To enjoy what you're doing and have fun with it. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.